Hello everyone, this is Ma'am Amano and this lecture video is all about geomorphic processes. This one is an intro for geomorphic and we will be discussing here the endogenic processes. These are the endogenic processes. We have here diatrophism, two major types of that, and the sudden. Under diatrophism, we will be discussing the epirogenic and orogenic. Then here, in epirogenic, we have two types of that, the upward and downward. And then orogenic, the tension and compression. While on the sudden movement, we have here the earthquake and volcano. Or volcanism. Let us define first the geomorphic processes. These are the physical and chemical interactions between the Earth's surface and the natural forces acting upon it to produce landforms. We have two types of this, the endogenic and exogenic processes, but here we will be focusing on the endogenic processes first. For endogenic processes in geology, the definition of that is that these are function of a body's internal geodynamic activity. So, ibig sabihin, nangyayari to inside the Earth's surface. So, kung above, kung yung exo ay at the surface of the Earth outside, ito ay inside. So, this occurs mostly in the mantle, in the core, ayan, dyan yan. First, we have here diastrophism or the slow movement. This is also known as tectonism or large-scale deformation of Earth's crust by natural processes. So on this method, there will be formation of continents, ocean basins, mountain systems, plateaus, reef valleys, among others. And it happens through the movement of the lithospheric plates. So it happens in the oceanic crust, your lithosphere, and the continental crust movements. Next, we have here for diatrophism, we have here the types of folds. The monocline. This is the single inclination, as we say, mono. So, one-sided slope. Yun ang ibig sabihin natin dito from the term mono. Slight bend in otherwise parallel layers of rock. So, nagkakaroon ng bending dyan. So, yung nakikita ninyo iba-ibang colors ng distribution dyan, it pertains to the different types of rocks na nagpo-fold na magkakasama. For example, itong green granite, tapos yung puti, limestone, let us say. And then, we have here the anticline. Simple symmetrical upfold resembles an arch due to compression. So, ayan, pataas yan. Kumbaga parang crest sa types of ng waves. Pataas yung folding niya. So, nangyayari yan due to compression. Kasi kapag inipit to dito, inipit yan, nag-ipit. So, nagkakaroon ng folding pataas. So, yung stress na to, okay, yung stress ng compression, ay pataas. Okay? Nagkakaroon ng anticline symmetrical upfolding. Next, we have here the third one, the syncline. Rock is warped downward or parang trough. Sa types ng waves, pababa naman yan. Like this one. Here. So, this also happens due to compression. So, ang stress naman or force na binibigay ay pababa and it causes the downward folding. Natutupi yung lupa. Then we have here the overfumed type of folds, a fold that has been pushed so vigorously from one side that it becomes overstiffened. Ibig sabihin nun, sobrang matarik na yung kanyang inclination, ganyan na. Nagkakos siya ng iba't ibang forms. Then we have here the overthrust. Pressure was great enough to break the overstiffened area and causes a shear or break. So, kapag sobra naman yung pressure na in-exert, diba? Pag sobra yung pressure, ang nangyayari, parang napunit yung lupa. Nagkakaroon ng split. Mag-i-split siya. So, magkakaroon dito ng convergent zone and divergent zone. Magkakaroon dito ng subduction zone, yung pababa. Tapos, magkakaroon ng continental formation dito. Or island formation, pwede rin. Or mountain ranges, pwede rin. Dito sa anticline, dito, possible dito ang mountains. Sa syncline naman, possible ang formation of valleys or trenches. Ayan. Tapos, dito naman, ridges, pwede. Dito naman, continental plates, continental building. And then, rock stress, yung binibigay na stress. So, before stress, bago magkaroon ng isang stress sa isang landmass, before that, ito yung tsura niya, napakaganda, patag. But when a stress occurred on a particular landmass, let us say compression, or pag-ipit, nagkakaroon ng two forms ng folding. We have here the upward one and the downward one. Okay? And then, nagkakaroon din tayo ng tension, another type of stress. So, ito naman yung hinihila. So, ayan. Kapag enough lang yung energy, hindi yan masisira. So, kapag enough lang yung stress na in-apply, magkakaroon lang dyan ng valleys, or lambak, or i-drift lang yung river, Okay, hatiin lang, magkakaroon ng divergence. Or pwede rin na mangyari ay magkakaroon ng trenches. Tension na yan. But then kapag sobra-sobra yung stress na in-apply, magkakaroon ng shearing o pagkapunit. Magkakaroon ng splittage. So, yung isa bababa, subduction zone, tapos yung isa magiging continental plate. So, yun yung type ng stress natin dito in terms of rock application. Okay. Types of boundaries, we have here divergent, convergent, and transform. Pag-usapan natin isa-isa yan. So, itong divergent from the term itself, magka-divert, palayo. Okay? Pag yung convergent naman, converge, magkasama sila. Okay? Transform, parang application ng fault when it comes to shearing. Ayan. Papunta doon, papunta rito. So, ang pinaka-prime focus natin dito ay plate, tapos nahahatak yan ng asthenosphere na mayroong mantle, tapos mayroong magma, kasi because of the convection in the mantle or movement in the mantle, because of the current and that. Kaya nagkakaroon ng movement of the plates. And nagkakaroon ng different types of boundaries. When we talk about plate boundaries, these are the edges of a continental plane or continental plate. These are the edges in which there will be a divergence or convergence. Kapag nagbanggaan, they will decide whether there will be a divergence or convergence or transform boundaries. Okay, so let us start with convergent boundaries. So, this happens when two plates are colliding. Subduction zones occur when one or both of the tectonic plates are composed of oceanic crust. So, either of the two tectonic plates, we have continental tsaka oceanic. So, kapag ang isa doon ay oceanic crust, mag-occur si subduction zone. Bakit? Kasi mas denser, di ba, ang oceanic crust. So, ang tendency, yung continental natin, that is, this is your continental crust, tapos ito yung oceanic crust. Dahil mas denser to, kababayan, magkakaroon tayo ngayon ng subduction zones or kung saan nababa yung mga old soils. And then, tapos yung less dense papatong dun sa taas, magkakaroon ng new landform. So, ito yung subduction zone na tinatawag natin. The plate being forced under is eventually melted and destroyed. So, yung magiging subduction zone natin, yun ay matutunaw ulit sa magma. Okay, tutunawin siya ng magma. Kung ano man ang bababa, kung anong denser at laging oceanic crust yun, yun ay bababa at magiging magma ulit. Okay? And then, we also have here, the first case, yung unang case, what will happen in the convergent boundaries where oceanic crust meets another oceanic crust. So, dito, ang nangyari, subduction zone, ang mangyayari, magkakaroon ng subduction zone, di ba, kapag nag-meet yung continental tsaka oceanic. But what would happen if both of them are oceanic crust? So, magkakaroon ng formation ng island arcs and oceanic trenches. Like, for example, Mariana Trench. Okay? So, both of them ay magiging subduction zones. Lahat yun ay bababa. So, di ba yung Mariana Trench, yun yung sinasabi nila na lahat ng binabato mo doon, lahat ng napupunta doon ay nawawala at hindi na nakikita ulit. Why? Because it's a type of subduction zone that mamimelt yan doon sa ilalim. Next, we have here what will happen next if an oceanic crust meets a continental crust. So, in this case, magkakaroon tayo ng subduction zone, which is the denser one, which is the oceanic plate or oceanic crust. Then, what will happen, yung continental crust natin, magkakaroon ng tinatawag nating mountain range. For example, yung Andes mountain ranges. And then, another one where continental crust meets another continental crust. Ang mangyayari naman doon, both continental crust are too light to subduct. So, hindi sila magka-subduct, hindi siya lulubog dahil less dense. So, what will happen is continent collision occurs, creating especially large mountain ranges. An example of this is the Himalayas mountain range for this one. Now, let us proceed on divergent boundaries. We have here two plates that are moving apart. So, moving apart yung plates, papaganon. So, we have here the space created can also fill with new crustal material source from molten magma that forms below. Divergent boundaries can form within the continents but will eventually open up and become ocean basins. When we say divergent, di ba, nagkakaroon sila ng space sa gitna. So, ito ay pwede maging valley or ocean basins. Pag sinabi natin basins, parang planggana siya na may dagat. So, yan ang mangyayari dun sa divergent boundaries. Kapag ang divergent boundaries ay nag-occur on land, divergent boundaries within the continents initially produce reefs, which produces reef valleys. Magkakaroon siya ng reef valleys. Now, if it is under the sea, the most active divergent plate boundaries are between oceanic plates and are often called mid-oceanic ridge. So, magkakaroon ng mid-oceanic ridge. So, this one is responsible for the seafloor spreading. Okay, ito yung lumalayo. Kasi, yung magma sa ilalim, nakahanap ng spot, tapos, ipupush yun, away from the hot spot here, from the caldera or from the source of the magma where it will come out. So, ipupush yan. So, nagkakaroon ng mid-oceanic ridge kung saan nag-occur yung seafloor spreading, nagpuproduce siya ng new soil. Yun ang mangyayari kapag nag-occur ang divergent boundary under the sea. Next, we have here the transform boundaries. Transform boundaries are plate boundaries where plates slide past each other. So, nag-slide, papunta dyan, tapos yung isa papunta rito, slide lang. And then, the relative motion of the plates is horizontal, hindi siya vertical, but it is horizontal. They can occur underwater or on land, and crust is neither destroyed nor created. Because of friction, the plates cannot simply glide past each other. Rather, stress builds up in both plates, and when it exceeds the threshold of the rocks, the energy is released, causing earthquakes. So, kapag nagkaroon ng transform boundaries, magkakaroon ng earthquakes. Okay? Next, let us discuss the fault. These are planar fracture or discontinuity in a volume of rock across which there has been significant displacement as a result of rock mass movement. So, when we say fault, bitak, we have three types of that: normal fault, reverse fault, strike-slip fault. So, this normal fault occurs in the divergent boundaries. This reverse fault occurs in the convergent boundaries. And this type of fault occurs in the transform boundaries in the earthquakes. Now, let us discuss the epirogenic and orogenic. So, we have here the epirogenic. These are the convergence of tectonic plates. And one indicator of occurrence of the epirogenic is the crustal thickening. So, ganyan yan. So, mag-form to ng mountains kasi kumakapal yun nandito. Crustal thickening. Kumakapal siya pataas. Mag-form yan ng mountains. Next, we have here the orogenic. Divergence of tectonic plates. Yan. Papalayo naman. Okay, it diverts rivers. So, kung may isang river dyan, kapag nagkaroon ng orogenic process, it will divert that into other ways. Okay, iniiba yung lugar. Kaya nga yung river dati, on the earlier hundreds, iba na yung location compared to the present day. And it creates drainages. So, let us talk about the seafloor spreading. And when we talk about that, we are pertaining to the mid-oceanic ridges. Ito yan, yung mga whites, those are the mid-oceanic ridges. The mid-oceanic ridges of the world are connected and form a single global mid-oceanic ridge system. So, kung natanongin nyo kung ilan ang mid-oceanic ridge, in the whole world, isa lang yan, but connected in the different regions. Mid-oceanic ridge system is the longest mountain range in the world with a total length of about 60,000 km. Okay, so anong purpose ng mid-oceanic ridge? So, I have here the divergence. Okay. The divergent plate, but then there is an upward movement of the magma here. It will produce new soil. Okay. Tapos ipupush niya downward yung old soil and then papasok ulit sa subduction zone para i-convert ulit dito, i-recycle. And then it will produce again, maghahanap ulit siya ng lalabasan. Okay? Now, let us talk about the Pacific Ring of Fire. When we talk about Pacific Ring of Fire, ibig sabihin, this one is the hot spot for volcanoes and the hot spot for the movements of the boundaries. So, this is usually 40,000 kilometers long and 500 kilometers wide. And as you can see, Philippines, here is the Philippines. We are in the Pacific Ring of Fire. So, we are prone to earthquakes, tsunamis, yes, and other landform formation and when it comes to the movement of the plates. So, we will be tackling on the sudden movements under the endogenic processes. First is the volcanism. When we say volcanism, this is the sudden release of magma from the mantle. It will spew, it will release gas, ashes, and other debris from the inside of the earth. So, that is volcanism. The volcano will emit ashes, and other debris. We have here the parts of the volcano. We have here the magma chamber, the source of the magma, the conduit, wherein this is the main passageway, and then these are the branches, the sill here, wherein there is no crater, so it just stays there. Okay, side vent, there is a side vent here, and then the main vent, the crater, where the magma will flow, and then here are the lava flows. Okay, these are the lava that flowed from the crater. Then these are the ash clouds. And then these are the ash falls. Okay? how does volcanism occurs or the eruption of a volcano? So what will happen first is the partial melting of the origin magma. So if you have here a rock that has been compressed and recycled from the subduction zone, imemelt yan dito. And then later on, when the temperature is high enough, it will rise. It will find an intrusion or underplating. Ibig sabihin, it will find a hole. It will create an hole kung saan pwede siyang lumabas. Intrusion, meaning to say kung saan siya pwedeng lumabas. So, what will happen next is it will create magma packets, as we call it, para siyang packets. Tapos pupunan niya yun ng magma hanggang sa makapag-create siya ng crater. So what will happen next if there is a crater already formed? There will be a volcanic eruption or extrusion of lava, lalabas na. And then the volcanic gases will mix with the atmosphere. Sulfuric acid, which is very dangerous on our respiratory system. Okay? Then, let us discuss the types of volcano when it comes to its structure. First, we have here the composite volcano. So, ito yung cinder volcano, then this one is shield volcano. So, makikita niyo yung difference niyan. Yung composite volcano, it has branches of lava flows. And then we have here the cinder composite. So, example of this is Mount Pinatubo. Then we have here the cinder cone volcano. So as you can see, the flow of the magma is one way. It is one way. And example of this is Mount Babuyan. And then we have here the shield volcano. For shield volcano, the example, it has wider crater here and we have here a lava flow. So mas lawak yung sinasakap na lava flow nito kasi usually mas liquid yung lava. Kaya mas malayo yung distance na nararating ng mga lava branches or lava flows natin dito. Example nito ay Mount Canlaon. Then we also have here the lava dome. So mostly lava yung nire-release niya, lava dome. Example of this is Taal. And then, classifications of volcano according to activity. We have the active, dormant, and inactive. So, when we talk about active volcanoes, meaning to say it has a tendency to erupt at present time. For dormant, it means that it will erupt in the future for the next 10 decades, for example. For inactive, it meaning to say the scientists predicted that these volcanoes would not erupt in the future. So, the Philippines are home to 300 volcanoes. 22 of that is active, and the 6 most active volcanoes in the Philippines are Mayon, Hibok-Hibok, Pinatubo, Taal, Canlaon, and Bunusan. And currently, these volcanoes are in alert level 2. If you'll check the warning system of the Philbox. So, in the world, there are 1,500 active volcanoes. 75% of that is located at the Ring of Fire. And then 90% of the world's earthquakes are found in the Ring of Fire, which includes the Philippines and other Southeast Asian nations. Now, let us talk about the other endogenic processes, which is under a type of sudden. These are the earthquakes. We can define this as the sudden shaking of the rock in the Earth's crust. So, on this type, we are familiar with the earthquakes. This is very destructive. And then, there are different types of seismic waves that governs the earthquakes. We have here first the body waves and the surface wave. Under body waves, we have P waves or primary waves, and then S wave or secondary waves. And then on types of the surface wave, we have here the love waves and the Rayleigh waves. Let us discuss this one by one. For the body waves, two types of that, P waves and S waves, surface waves, Rayleigh waves, and love waves. So for body waves, this type of waves travel within the body of the Earth. Two main types of this is the primary and secondary. For primary waves or P waves, this causes the ground to compress and expand, okay, to move back and forth in the direction of travel. And this one is called as the primary wave because this is the first type of wave to arrive at seismic recording stations. P waves can travel through solids, liquids, and even gases. So, ito yung P-waves niyo earlier. So, sabi, nagkakaroon ng expansion and compression. So, nag-expand, tapos compress itong mas maliliit na to. Okay? Ito, this one. Okay. So, hindi mararamdaman sa ibang part yung movement. Depende kasi dun sa intensity. Depende sa intensity ng wave. Okay? But, this one is not that destructive. Usually, hindi mo siya mararamdaman unfelt. There is just a weak jolt, kumbaga. So, ito sinasabi natin to move back and forth kasi nagkakaroon nga ng compression and expansion. Habang, for example, papunta rito yung compression and expansion tapos yung direction ng wave ay papunta rito. Kasi nako-compress siya tapos na-expand. So, nagkakaroon ng movement back and forth. Para siyang springer. Okay? Next, we have here the secondary waves or S waves. This shakes the ground in a shearing, pagpunit, or crosswise motion that is perpendicular to the direction of travel. Okay, so for example, yung travel mo ay papunta rito, perpendicular, ibig sabihin nag-create ng 90-degree angle, pababa, crosswise yan, hatiin niya yung perpendicular angle na yan. So when this happen, nagkakaroon ng splittage sa lupa. Okay, underneath, kasi body waves to na sa ilalim. Okay? So, it moves the ground up and down. Ayan, up and down. Ay, pag ganyan yan. Or from side to side, depende dun sa perpendicular movement. So, kung papunta rito yung motion, ikakat niya yan, shake niya yung ground na upward or downward. And then, they always arrive after the P waves. Kaya siya tinawag na secondary waves kasi pangalawa siya laging dumarating sa recording station after lagi siya ng primary waves. So, unlike ng primary waves, this type of wave can only travel through solid materials. Okay? So, kapag may earthquake, ang unang nire-record sa recording station ay yung mga body waves. Ang mauna ay primary waves, susunod ng secondary waves. Ngayon, kapag nakadaan na yung secondary waves, susunod naman ngayon yung surface wave. Ito na yung nasa crust mismo ng Earth. So, we have, ito yung sinasabi kong parang springer, di ba? Parang laruan. So, kung ito yung movement mo, hand motion mo, ang movement ng wave ay papunta doon, pero yung spring may tendency na mag-back and forth. Okay? Ito na mga secondary waves, ito yung movement mo pataas, kinakat siya perpendicular, tapos yung wave mo ay pag ganun lang, yung movement. Okay? Then we also have here the surface wave. Ayan, katulad ng sinabi ko kanina, mag-a-appear to after ng body waves. Okay? So, they can travel only through solid materials. Kaya nasa crust lang yan. And then, slower moving than body waves, mas mabagal, but are much larger and therefore more destructive. Bakit siya naging mas larger? Kasi may medium, di ba? May medium tapos nasa Earth's surface. So, ang tendency nag-accumulate yung energy. Kaya nagkakaroon siya ng larger energy, expulsion. Okay, mas mataas yung release. Examples nito ay yung Rayleigh waves tsaka yung love waves. And mara-record to or darating to sa recording station after ng body waves. And we have here the love waves. Let us discuss this one. So, the love waves and Rayleigh waves are named after the scientist who discovered them. Okay? This one is a horizontal motion, that moves the surface from side to side perpendicular to the direction of the wave that it is traveling. So, of the two surface wave between compared to the Rayleigh waves, this one moves faster. So, Rayleigh waves, we have here, it causes the ground to shake in an elliptical pattern. So, nagkakaroon ng ellipse. So, very destructive yun. And then, of all the seismic waves, Rayleigh waves spread out the most, giving them a long duration on seismograph recording each other. So, ito yung love wave. So, sinabi doon na ang motion niya ay horizontal, pero sinishake niya yung ground side to side. So, kung nagka-crumble yung Earth's crust, ayan, nagko-fall yan kasi sinishake niya yung love waves. While itong Rayleigh waves naman, nagkakos siya ng elliptical pattern dito, sa part na to. May elliptical pattern yan. So now let us compare the seismogram or seismograph of the surface waves and body waves. Again, these are the body waves. Ito. Tapos ito ay surface wave. Okay? So, yung P wave, primary wave, ayan, unfelt siya on the Earth's surface. Tapos yung S wave, medyo nag-roll. But then itong surface wave, mas matagal yung yung duration niya sa seismograph. Kasi mas dama yan. Okay? Ito yung P waves, small jolt or light shaking or not felt. Then S waves, larger jolt or strong shaking. Tapos yung surface waves, nagkakaroon ng rolling. So, we have here earthquakes send out seismic energy as both body and surface waves. The body waves, P and S, and surface waves recorded by a seismometer. Tapos ito yung intensity nung ito yung ginagamit natin as intensity scale of the earthquake in terms of the US to fill box. We have here the scale of 1 is scarcely perceptible. Ito yung definition. So this is perceptible to people under favorable circumstances. And intensity scale 2, slightly felt. Ito yung description. Mag-swing slightly yung hanging objects. Tapos mararamdaman siya ng mga few individuals at home. And then, scale 3, weak shaking. Weak shaking. Mararamdaman lahat ng people indoors, especially dun sa nasa upper floors ng buildings. Then, we have here 4, moderately strong shaking, 5, strong shaking. These are the descriptions. I'll send this to you in reference. Although, that can be easily understood naman. So, we have here 5, strong shaking, 6, very strong, 7, destructive, 8, very destructive, 9, devastating, and 10, completely devastating. Okay? So, I'll send this one to you for the descriptions. Okay? All for the geomorphic processes under the topic endogenic processes.